laboratory experiments about the corruption, and it will turn out that we are lying if we are not observed by the others, but we are lying even more if we are in the group, which is, I think, not intuitive for the first time. And further, we will speak about that the cooperative behavior of the humans is in the background of, or how can I say, or sensitivity to the corrupt, to lie and to behave in a non-ethical manner together. And after that we have some summary and some conclusions at the very end. So let's go ahead. And what is corruption? What is the definition of it? There are a lot of definitions of it, but there is a very simple definition here that corruption is an unethical, an illegal behavior which gives some benefit for the actors, and both or all of the individuals who are interacted in this corrupt behavior is beneficial for all of them, I can say. And, okay.
Sorry, does this definition include like adultery or something like that? Because it might be beneficial for both parties, but like it's supposed to be unethical.
Yeah.
Could
yeah. But did you know that the second part is very specific for corruption, that they say that at least one of the person who is included to the corrupt behavior use the power or economic power of it or something like this in the interaction. Yeah. But we will not concentrate for that part of the corruption. We are interested in whether how this non-legal, unethical or non-ethical something behavior does occur if persons interact to each other like this. Okay? So we can say that you can see this, yeah. So generally, if somebody interested in corruption, they consider the social background and the interaction with corruption, the social background. This is the general view, but we are interested in the human behavior, how it interacts with corruption, and what is the evolutionary background of the human behavior which is correlated with the corruption, and we are not interested in at that part of the corruption, which is the general things. Okay? And yeah, the humans, we are super or hyper cooperators. What does it mean? For example, so we live in a group, and we live in a group where we can help each other indirectly, which means that I have you will have somebody else, and after that later I will be helped by somebody else within the group. So this is a very specific human behavior which is not known in animals. But it's very specific for humans that we can change the benefits. What does it mean? That, for example, if I help you to build up a house, later you will help me to care my children, and you can say we can change the values of different things, which is not valid for animals as well. It's very important and typically human. Yeah.
And what about symbiotic animals and life forms which like live in symbiosis?
But at that case, you know that the benefit for one individual is a very definite one, which is a very rigid interaction. I give you something and you give back something else for me. That's true, but this is very rigid. It's mechanistically or anatomically correlated, not in humans. Okay.
This type of corruption is not so bad. Our government is doing much worse.
Yeah. At that time, I don't speak about corruption. I speak about cooperation. Okay, so it's very specific human things that we could speak to each other, and we have a very high level cognitive abilities, and we could give information to each other, and this information is reliable. It's very important that why it is reliable and why the human cooperation is generally maintained by this reliable information. It's a very tricky question in evolutionary point of view. And connected with this argumentation, the fitness of a human, not in our very developed society, but in our evolutionary background, the fitness of the individual is very highly correlated for human behavior, whether the guy is a reliable informator or is it altruistic or is it cooperator or not. So it's generally true in our evolutionary background that if somebody is a good informator and he or she is an altruistic person or a cooperative person, it will have a high fitness. So it's a very important part of the fitness of the humans, and this one is very specific for humans. Just imagine a small group in hunter-gatherers, not the individuals in the developed society.
Does being a good informator include being altruistic and selfless, or are these like separate?
It's a separate character. But these two separate characters are both of them are very important.
Okay.
To be, how can I say, to be a reliable gossiper about the altruistic behavior of the others, but to be altruistic as well. Okay.
So I can be a very good communicator, but if I'm not altruistic, people will know that.
It's not enough.
It's not enough.
Both of them is important.
Okay.
But communication means that means that you are reliable about the behavior of the others.
Okay.
Okay. And it's very specific for humans that there is a very complex norm systems which maintains this society, this small level society as well. What does it mean? That there is a rules in the group what is good and what is bad. Good to be an altruistic and bad to be a defective or something like this. Okay, so we can say that despite the norm system can be very different, there is one or two very, very common background of the norm systems. One of them is say honestly what others do, which means what others do in a cooperative and an altruistic situation, and other things that be altruistic or cooperative one. So interestingly, if you compare the different norm systems in different parts of the world, you can find very, very different details of these norms. But these two how can I say, two actions and two parts of the norms are common, which is very important part of the human societies. So we can say to give something is very very rewarded by our brain, and to get something is rewarded as well. But interestingly, our brain is much more sensitive to give something to others. So our reward center in our brain are more activated if we give something to somebody else than if we get something to somebody else.
Is this true for everybody?
Pardon?
Is this true for everybody?
No. There is a variation for humans that's general, but it's interestingly, it's how can I say, it's maintained by the brain of the humans. That to give something to others is something which is good for us. Okay, and let's
stick to English, right? Or Hungarian? Yeah. Okay. Let's stick to English.
Okay. Let's show the simplest game where you can find the most basics of this human behavior. This game is a dictator game. It's a very simple one. This dictator game is a well-known game, not in Hungary but everywhere in the world, because it's the simplest one. The player one gets some money from the researchers, for example 1,000 forint, And after that, it's the researcher said to this person that, okay, you have 1,000 forint, and there is another person in another room somewhere else, and it's up to you how many amount of money you give to the person too. And what does happen generally? Humans generally give some money to the person too. This is absolutely interesting because they are not connection to each other, they never see each other, and interestingly they have an inner capacity to give some money to the others. And even more interesting that if the experimental situation is modified a bit to give some dots on the screen, then subjects will give a little bit more money, significantly more money to the other person. Why is it important? Because the two dots on the screen, it looks like the two eyes. So it is important that without very, how can I say, without knowing that there is somebody else who are watching you, in our brain we are feeling that somebody is with me and watching me, and I give a little bit more money in that situation. So after that we think that it's a very important part to be altruistic, that others are watching, others watching us or not. And it's interesting that the situation is not so easy, because some guys some years before made a field experiment on it in Las Vegas, and the experiment was a very simple one. One of the experimental arrives at the bus stop, and say a person who was staying on the bus stop, okay, I have to leave now, and I have some tokens, and I give you these tokens just to change to money. And there is another person here on the bus stop. This other person was the second experimenter actually, and it's up to you how many tokens do you give to the other person. It's up to you, no problem at all. And what's the result of this experiment? Nobody never gives money to the other person in this field experiment. And what is the difference here? The guy who was staying on the bus stop was absolutely sure that nobody will see this action who is important for this person, who is in the same reference group with this person. In the previous experiment, when there is, that there is a lab and together, there is a feeling that, okay, this scientist will have some opinion about me because he collected the data. I know he knows that, okay, I was a very altruistic guy, or I was a not altruistic guy. So it's very important in this experiment that it.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So it's turned out that the background is very important, and it's very important whether we are observed by others who is important for us, or not observed by others who is important for us. I skipped this one, but it's because you couldn't see it easily. But we can say that, okay, it's very important for the experiment that altruistic act increase the reputation of the individuals, and reputation is very important for the fitness of humans. It's a consequence of this. It's consequence of this that it's very important that others observe us when we are altruistic. Others who are important for us, to say that we are in the same reference group. And we have seen that our brain system evolved to be very, very sensitive to this fact, to the social fact. We can say that human brain is a social brain, which means, for example, that we are very sensitive if we give somebody else. As I have said, that it's very rewarding for us if we could give something to somebody else, mainly in that case if others see me or see us. And we have shown that the social norms are very important to maintain this situation. Okay,
They're trying to outperform
And
us.
let's go ahead to the corruption. What is the connection with this topic, with the corruption? So, if it is more rewarding for us, we start to lie. It's interesting. The experiment is very simple. One, the subjects will get a die, and the situation is very easy. If they, how can I say, they throw a die or
roll a die.
roll a die, yes, roll a die, yeah, right side. If somebody roll a 6, then the reward is 0. And somebody roll a different number, the reward is as many euros as the number of the die. Okay, so if somebody roll 3, then 3 euros, and 4 euros, and that's it. But in this situation, they say, you will sit in a room alone. You have to roll a die and write on the screen the number which is rolled before. But you know, it's up to you. You are honest or not, and nobody knows whether you are honest or not. And what's the interesting situation here? You can see the distribution after the experiment. 600 different subjects were tested like this. And what is the distribution here? You know, this 0 means that this is die 6. This is the case when nobody will get money. And this is 5. This is the highest highest reward. And you can see that guys tend to say that, oh, I roll at 5, and after that the guys say that I roll at 4, and this line is what we will get if the situation is really random, because there are 600 different subjects here. You will get, if they would be honest, that the distribution looks like this. Okay, so what does happen here? That a lot of people start to lie here. The situation is very interesting, because naively we would think that most of the individuals will lie as to say 5, not 4. But interestingly, a very significant part try to hide the cheating, to say 4. Because they say, okay, the others will say 5 because it's trivial that that's cheating, but I will say 4. But it seems to be a very general strategy here. For example, in a control experiment, they say that, okay, there is some very small work here, and it's up to you how many euros or Swiss francs you will ask for that. And they say from 0 to 5 francs, you may ask that, okay, it's 4 or 5 euros for me, this small work. And a very significant part say 4 euros in that case, not the maximum 5 euros. This is the same strategy, not to be too how can I say,
Greedy, yeah.
or needy or something like this. Okay, to hide this one. So it seems to be that lying is very beneficial in this situation, because nobody knows that I am lying. But to remain there, to hide a little bit this lying, or to maintain the good self picture. You know, that's, I am lying, but not too much, or something like this. Is the background. Okay.
Is there any difference when, like, how do you measure when it's like, I just want to look good to myself,
Yeah.
like I want to feel good about myself, and when others are watching, like, I guess there's a significant difference, right?
Yeah, there's a significant difference, but at the first experiment, there is no information about whether I was lying or not. But in the second case, there is an information about, you know, that they say that you can ask for this or something.
Mm-hmm.
So in the second case, it seems to be that its self-picture is important.
Mm-hmm.
The first case we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But from the second experiment, we can we can have some conjecture that this is included in the first experiment as well.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Here in Hungary it's much more worse. The circle of friends close to Fidesz, they ask at least 50%, not 5.
They are not the average people.
Yeah, yeah. It's important because this is randomly collected people from the university, not as specifically selected.
Yeah, I believe there
not
is a
politicians or something like this. Okay.
there's a
important.
contra-selection in politics, I believe.
Yeah. So the other interesting part of it, which is
can be proved.
Can it be?
Yeah.
There's a contra-selection?
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry.
yeah.
Let's let him
Yep,
Okay.
do
sorry.
his lecture.
Now, so it's interesting other part of this series of experiments that if somebody behaves in a non-ethical manner, after the second experiment, the same type of second experiment, they became even more non-ethical. And it's rather correlated with the corruption. What does it mean here? That they say, okay, you have done this experiment, this die rolling, but after that, please estimate the distribution of the numbers here. And you can see the first line is the estimation after the first series of experiment. And interestingly, most of the guys say that okay, the individuals will say as many 4 as it would follow from the random distribution, and as many 3 as it would follow from the random distribution, but more 5. Okay, but more 5. But it's interesting. It's correlated with the real distribution that they say more 4 than the random one, because they say other will say 5. And if I say 4, it's hidden that I am cheating as well. But after the first experimental situation, they became even more cheating and estimate that others is cheating is even more than the first series of experiments.
Was it knowing the result of the first experiment?
No,
Or just
just
doing it again?
yeah. It's important. This is an important question, but just do it again. You know, they feel it's not so problematic inside, not so problematic to be non-ethical, because they say others is like me. You know, this is the general feeling. Do you know this problem in the corruption? But I think this is the most interesting part of my talk, what I wanted to speak here, that this is the situation when the corruption is connected with the cooperation. This is a variant of the previous experiment. The first, in the control experiment, there is only one individual, and the task is the following. You have to roll a die and roll a die again. And if you roll the same number, you will get the as many euros as the number of the 2 rolls together. Okay, if you roll 2 times 2, then you will get 2 euros. That's it.
Not 4?
No,
Okay.
2
Okay.
at that time. Okay, if you roll different numbers, you will get 0.
Okay.
But the situation is that the same. You are the only one who sees the dying. And after that, you have to type on the computer. And if you type 6, you will get 6 euros. It's up to you. Up to you how many doubles you inform. How can I say? Inform the experimenter. Okay, so this is the control situation, and what is the interesting part of the non-control one? We have player A. The player A will roll a die and write the screen the number. After that, so it is on the screen. After that, the player B roll a die and write on the computer as well. And the rule is the same. If both of them roll the same number, then both of them will get the money. But you know, up to the subjects that they are honest or not. So it might be the case that player A roll 2 and write 6, and after that it will roll 5, write 6 as well. Okay. So the reward depends, the benefit depends of the cooperation of the two guys, and this is a real situation of the corruption. Okay, both of them have to behave in an unethical or an illegal manner to get the reward.
I mean, there could be a possibility that only one has to be actively cheating, right? Because the other one can just like be a passive.
Yeah. What does it mean, the
Can be
passive?
analyzed by the distribution.
Yeah.
First and
So later we will analyze the
Okay,
data.
okay.
It might be some cases that
I rolled-
accidentally they bought the same number.
No, I mean that there can be situations where the first person doesn't want to cheat, so I like they roll a 3 or a 2,
Yeah.
they write that. But it will depend on the other person
Yeah.
primarily. That has to be the active part, because you
Yeah.
have to make the choice
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
matching.
That's the case, but you will see that there are other very important controls for this experiment, and we have some information on the distribution of the doubles, and it's turned out that this is not the case.
Okay.
Okay. So they have two interesting controls as well to figure out what is important in this experiment. In one of the control, the player A will get a fixed sum, €1, independently of the numbers, and independently whether both of them will roll the same number or doesn't matter. And in control 2, the player B will get a fixed number independently of the numbers and independently whether both of them are the same, and so on. Okay?
Can they coordinate talk to each other?
Pardon?
Can they coordinate talk to each other?
In this case not, but in the next experiment which I want to show, they have option to talk to each other, and it's again a very interesting one. Okay? And in this experiment, two subjects will play 20 times to each other in a series of die rolling. And what has happened from this? That the probability they will roll the same number is 1/6. Okay? And the average amount they will win, it's very easy to compute from this. There's this 3 1/3 euros. Okay? Now that's, yeah? And what is the situation here? On average, they inform the scientists more than 15 Ks than they wrote the same number. And generally, they will inform the scientists that they wrote 6. I will show you the distribution here. This is the general random distribution, and this is the real cases when both of them informed that they wrote 6, both of them they wrote 5, both of them they wrote 4, and these are the remaining cases. So interestingly, what is even more interesting, that if you compare to the case when they did it alone, you know, throw 2 times, roll the die 2 times, and after that you have to inform the experimenter about the result, then the level of cheating is significantly smaller than in the situation. Okay.
Okay, to get a few shots in here.
They're from Al Jazeera.
Okay, no problem. So in the case when they cooperatively cheating, and if you compare to the case of control experiment A and B, when basically one of the individual will get only a fixed number, but the other, it's better if the other say the same number than the other. The cooperation level or corruption level remains smaller than in the situation when they interact with each other cooperatively. What does it mean? It means that they became corrupt even much more probable if they realize that, okay, I am corrupt now, but it's beneficial to the other as well. And this is the real corrupt situation. You know, I say it's very good for me, but yeah, I am a good person because it's good for the other as well. And this is the reason they tend to be very, very corrupt in this situation, or lying to each other. And they generally say that 6-6, 6-6. Okay? And this is very surprising, I think, for the first time. And it's interesting, I would say very briefly about this, that after that, it turned out that this result depends on the cultural background of the individuals as well. Because the previous experiment was made by students from the economic institute. And they said for students who learn economics, learn very, very fast, but what is most important is to maximize the income. And they realized that I could maximize the income if I cheating. I could cheat now, and I'd be cheating together at a very high level. So in this experiment, they cheat more than 67%. But the other group made the same experiment with students on a psychology department. And it's very, very different because they say that students who learn psychology are more sensitive to the inner picture of herself or himself or something like this. So you can say that they are more sensitive to the mental behavior or something like this. Yeah?
As an economist, I feel like I have to jump in and say that we learn to maximize utility, not the income.
Okay.
So, and we do talk about the fact that you know, altruism could be part of your utility. So it's like, but it's still an individual perspective.
And anyway, this is a kind of altruism. Whereas the other one.
Yes, this is how he started the lecture about altruism and how that plays into cooperative situations. So yeah, I think I just felt like I have to put this disclaimer.
By the way, what is the experiment?
Because in the university we have very good sound. Sorry to interrupt.
On that side.
Yeah, I just
Looks like we're being lobbed up by some journalists.
Thank you, thank you.
So, what does the experiment say for us? Okay. So if you consider this experiment, only 47% of individuals will cheat. So the difference is significant between them. But interestingly, after that, they made a trick for these psychological students. They show one of the group. They consider two groups, and they show the result of the previous experiment by the economic students for the first group, and the previous result of the psychological students for the second group. And there is a significant difference between the result after that, because those who realize that others are cheating in a high level tend to be more cheating than those who realize that others are not so cheating in this experiment. And yeah, and we know from this everyday situation that this is the case. If you realize that in the neighborhood or society others are very, very corrupt and cheaty, we tend to be more corrupt and cheaty as well. Okay. And okay, it's a little bit more complicated setup of the same experiment, but I haven't too much time here. But what is important here, that you couldn't see it in the slide, but there is a series of different experiments. But in the second series, there is there is an interesting modification because they form groups of three persons and they play the same dice rolling experiment, but they, in the 3-person group, they have time to cheat, to have a chat. Okay, so to chat to each other. So there is a communication options here, and they compare to the situation when there is no option to have a communication, and the situation is even worse. If they could communicate to each other, then they became even more corrupt than before. And they analyzed the chat after that, and the chat is focused on the money and on the cheating, and to speak about why not to do it, because it's much more helpful for us or much more rewarding for us. And it's very interesting that in a control experiment there is no option to communicate to each other, but to write down the thinking, and it doesn't matter at all. So generally the subjects has the idea in the mind that it would be very good to cheat, it would be very good to be corrupt. But if there is no communication, the corruption didn't increase. So communication is important because they realized after that, okay, not only me, but the others thinks like me. You know, this is the devaluation of the norm, the typical case of it. Yeah, it's to summarize that if there is a communication in this group experiment, then corruption increased significantly. So while communication is very important generally to maintain cooperation, in this case the corrupt cooperation is maintained by the communication as well. So it's not so good news for us. Yeah? Yeah. And these are the same that I have said already. Yeah, the last one is very interesting. They try to find out what is the personal differences which is important in the corrupt situation, and they didn't find any significant connection, except that women became more easily corrupt in the communicative situation than men, because they could, how can I say, they could communicate more honestly and more fastly about their feelings and the aims of the situation than men.
But like the slide says that in a when you're just alone and you're in the single case without communication, they are more truthful. Yeah. So like alone they're more truthful.
Yeah, alone. But the communication made them more cheaty.
And they could achieve it quicker and more straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay.
They could convince each other much more easily, or a little bit easily. I don't know its significance level.
In this 3-person case, were there any studies of the group dynamics? Whether there were cases where one people can make others not cheat?
It's a very important question. I wanted to cancel it because of the time, but it turned out that there will be differences between groups, and in groups when some cases one of the person tried to communicate about to be honest, then the level of cheating decreased. And the other groups where the dominant person started to speak about the cheating, it became more cheating. And the second important one, if they make the experiment in a series, as time increased or the number of series increased, they generally get even more and more corrupt. That's a general feeling as well. Okay, so what is the summary of the talk? That we easily cancelled or very general norm that to say the honestly the truth if we will have some benefit from that, assuming that the others couldn't realize that I'm lying. It's an important part of it. It turned out from the experiment that this is in the background, and if there is a common benefit for the individuals who are lying and cheating together, it's increased the non-honest.
Sorry to interrupt. Thanks everybody. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you for being here.
So this common cheating, it's increased the common communication, the cheating situation increased the possibility of corrupt behavior. And this communication devaluates the moral of the group very fast. Even then, that there is no common interest of them, but I didn't speak about it before, so this is true as well. And the last one, which turned out with comparing the different groups, that the norms and how can I say this, értékrend, vagy
Values.
Vagy még valaki, aki nem beszél angolul?
I mean, yeah, right.
Yeah, and the
Is
values.
there anybody? How many people? Like, okay, I think we can we can switch to Hungarian. If you want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the inner values determine the level of corruption and the slope of the decreasing of the moral behavior. So to summarize that, what is, you couldn't see the picture here. We have a hunter-gatherer group here. That's our evolution and background. And in our evolutionary background, it was very important that we could communicate to each other. We were good cooperators as well, and we lived together in a group. And this group living is maintained, this communication and cooperation. And for this behavior, it followed that we have a very strong coordination and cooperation, and there is a social cohesion and social norms and so on, which are tolerant, we are very tolerant to each other, which is a consequence of our evolutionary background. And this evolutionary background, to be tolerant to each other and to follow the norms to each other and to communicate to each other, it follows from them that we are very sensitive to be corrupt as well. But this is the problem, so we are in cooperative and corrupt situation as well. And that's the end, the very end of the story.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oops.
Van egy kérdésem.
Okay.
Hogy, ja, bocsi, neked is.
Bocsánat,
Persze.
már csak azért is kicsit zűrzavar.